Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we have a special guest for you today. Her name is Kelli Miller, and she is awesome. She is a psychotherapist, an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, and best-selling author and radio host. Kelli is the author of the couples relationship book called Love Hacks, Simple Solutions to Your Most Common Relationship Issues. And it's awesome. I've read it. I love it. I approve. Definitely purchase this book. And also the award-winning author to Thriving with ADHD, which has sold over 175,000 copies. Also an owner of this too. Kelli is awesome. She's a columnist for Psychology Today with a relationship host on Balance by Nature TV. And she's a writer, a brand ambassador, and relationship host for WikiHow. Kelli is a co-host to an LA talk radio show with over 1 million listeners, 250 guest celebrities and authors, and an expert radio personality for Sirius and XM Radio. She's amazing. And she was also the women's relationship expert on the examiner.com. And she also is an advice columnist to the largest listserv in the country, as well as to a freelance writer to over 12 magazines and newspapers. And she was recently quoted in Oprah magazine with 3 separate relationship articles, Outside Magazine, and had a piece in the Hollywood Reporter. Kelli is amazing. And she is here to talk about relationship hacks today, guys. Get ready.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about such an important topic, which is relationships and how to navigate the bumps.
Yes, I'm here for it. I'm ready and ask away.
Okay, so talk to me about, so you're a therapist and you also wrote this amazing book called Love Hacks. So in those 2 pieces, as you were doing research, but also like your clinical experience, what would you say are the most common challenges that couples like have that either sometimes we get the benefit of seeing them in therapy, but sometimes, you know, they're not there. But what are the things that bring people to therapy saying like, we have an issue here?
Yeah. So that's how this book started. Was I felt like I was repeatedly hearing the same things, the same issues. And you had suggested 3 just now, or you had asked about 3. So to me, the top 3 are communication is number 1. And it sounds so cliche, but it's just couples who come in and are like, I don't understand my partner. Like we're just not hearing each other. What's going on there? Number 2 is finances. And then number 3, I would say, is infidelity / trust. In some form. So not even necessarily there's been an infidelity, but there's just like not trust in the relationship. So I'd say those 3 are kind of the top that I see in the office, and hence why I created the book.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the book. So like you were seeing the same issues over and over. And so you thought, because your book is so unique in how it addresses issues. It's not like, I feel like sometimes we read books and there's like one thing. They're like, if you have this issue, do this thing, right? Yeah. And I've noticed in my therapy practice that one size does not fit all. So I love that you did not follow that method. But you just presented it in such a lovely, easy to digest way. So can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, thank you so much. So that was, I noticed that all the couples books on the market were 250 pages. It was cumbersome. It was long. It was like, sit down with your partner and, you know, spend an hour writing this or analyzing this. And I was like, oh my gosh, these poor couples who are in crisis, you know, they don't have time for that. They just want the kind of the quick and easy, so to speak. And so it's not a replacement for therapy, but it's a great either adjunct, or if you can't afford therapy, it's the next best thing to me. And so, yeah, I wanted to create just quick and easy solutions when you were going through something, and different, and like you said, you know, different ones, because sometimes one thing may work perfectly for one couple and the other couple it won't work at all. So I wanted to get a little variety in there as well with the 3 solutions for each.
Yeah. And when I was reading the book, I found myself, I liked that it was, I think there are times where sometimes we just need to feel like we're not drowning.
Yes.
Right. And so like, I think when you're in the middle of what you would define as like a crisis in your relationship, or like things are just like you keep hitting the same topics over and over. And we've talked about this, but like nothing seems to be improving. And you're like thinking like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm just like so tired of this cycle, but I still love this person and I'm frustrated, right? Like I want it to be better. And maybe both people are feeling that way. I loved that it was something where you could implement it on your own. You didn't need a degree in order to understand what you were talking about and implement it. And a lot of them, I felt like, I tried to take, my poor husband has been in therapy since we met with me. He jokes, right? Not truly, but he's like, I'm in therapy every day. Sure. Me too. But I think, from just the average couple of like, could you get your partner's buy-in to this? Right. And I felt like almost all of them you could. And so I think it was something really valuable that like both partners would be interested in entertaining an idea that could solve a critical component of like what doesn't seem to be going right. So thank you. That's awesome.
No, I appreciate that so much. That was really the goal, was like, how can I make it easy for both people where it's not going to be overwhelming and it's not going to be too therapy. It's going to be very relatable. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad that
Yes. Okay. So let's break down relationship struggles into some like hacks. So like, you've done like these hacks in your book and given each one like 3 hacks that you could use. Could you, when we talk about communication and then we talked about finances and then we talked about like trust or infidelity, could you talk to us about what some of the hacks are in terms of what couples could do? So let's start with communication. Like what are some of the things that you're talking about in your book or that you feel like in therapy that you're teaching the couples that come in to work with you that really are successful?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind, and I literally just had a couple, so it's fresh in my mind.
Love it.
She was like, I feel like he's not listening to me. He's not hearing me. And he's like looking at me like, what is she talking about? I'm like sitting with her and I'm telling her exactly what to do. And, that this is what I see the issue is. And, and it was, again, very cliche, but these things are cliche for a reason. And she's like, I just want you to listen to me. I actually don't want a solution. And so he is very wired for him, it's very clear. I want to help. So I'm going to give the solution that I see fit. And I think she felt like, when he does that, I feel like I'm not good enough, or, I didn't think of that on my own, or I just want him to listen. And so one of the most simple is asking your partner, do you want me to be a soundboard today, or do you want feedback? And this way, both people, so I encourage it on both ends, where she could say to him, hey, I'm going to vent about my day. I would love for you just to be a soundboard today. And that signals to him like, okay, no solution today, just listening. Or vice versa. If she starts going into it, he could then say, or she, whichever way, what would you like today? Do you want my feedback? Do you want solutions? Or do you just want me to listen? And it's so funny because it's so simple, but it makes all the difference. And so that's a really simple tool just as far as communication.
Yes, I love that. And I even use it with teenagers, right? Or kids too, right? Like of what do they want out of that relationship? And I think as a couple, it's so important because you do feel dismissed if you're wanting somebody to just listen, or that like they're oversimplifying the problem and maybe you already knew what the solution was going to be, but like you just wanted to like vent it out, just get it out to the universe so you don't have to keep it in your body, which can be so helpful and healthy to do. But then other times if somebody is just listening and not like giving you a solution, you're like, are you even listening to me?
Exactly. Right. Like, hey, I feel like you're in this with me if you're giving me solutions. So it really goes both ways.
Yes. Great. Yes. So I love that. Okay. So let's talk about a skill around finances. What do you feel is a good financial tool?
Okay. So a lot of times, obviously you have one person in the relationships who's a saver, one who's a spender. And so I think the fundamental piece is I want the couple to sit down and say, hey, what are our short-term goals and what are our long-term goals? And I put a couple acronyms in the book, but it's just really simple because for one party, they could be really thinking like, okay, I want to save for a house. And the other person's like, hey, I can't wait to go to the Bahamas next month. Like, that's what I'm focused on. And so, to have both, like, okay, great. Let's have our short-term goals and like, let's look at that and what we can afford. And let's look at our long-term goals. What does that look like for you in 5 years? And so both people, it's really just getting both people on the same page around that. And then I think it's also really getting honest and transparent about what was finances like growing up for you. And I mean, that plays a huge part. So if one party saw, their parents being secretive and hiding and, they might be likely to kind of do the same thing, and the other partner's confused because in their household, it was very, open and transparent. And so I think it's also just kind of talking about to each other, what was it like with your parents? Was your dad a spender? Was your mom a spender? Was your, caregiver, everything like that, where I think that understanding creates a lot of compassion of like, oh, okay, they're not transparent, maybe because they didn't learn to be. Things like that, I think really help.
Yeah, which it all really goes back to communication, right? Like understanding that piece of the other person, because each person was raised in their own different household. I mean, at least my husband and I had totally different upbringings, right? Some commonalities, but like a lot of huge differences, both ethnically and also just experientially, and what our families valued in terms of how we spent money or didn't spend money. It was all very different. And so I think that is such great advice to like get curious about their childhoods, because that really sometimes we're like, okay, I've made it, so I can spend all this money because I didn't have any money as a child, right? And so like now I can buy everything I want when I want it, right? And the other person's thinking like, this is so irresponsible. Like we have money, we should save, right? And so then conflict can totally arise, and knowing what each other's goals are also so important, because if somebody's saving and you're spending, they're going to be pretty pissed, right? Exactly. Like, yes, yeah, they're not in alignment.
Well, and you brought up such a great point about, somebody who feels like they made it and they can finally spend. So, I think there should be talk about, what does money and success signify to you? A lot of people, it is power, and they feel like, okay, if I own this car, this thing, then I've made it, and status becomes really the primary focus, where it's like, okay, wait, hold on. We have to remind ourselves we're a unit, we're a team here. What's important to both of us, that type of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Which can be so hard. And even with communication, how people communicated within their relationships growing up can be very different too, right? Where you went to your mom if you wanted X, and you went to your dad if you wanted Y. And so then there was some like gender role things happening in there, or maybe just maybe there was diversity within your household, right? So it's like, we all are a product of our environment. And if we liked it, we can keep doing it, right? If we didn't like it, we can change it. But a lot of times there has to be awareness. And sometimes we haven't even thought about like, how did my parents communicate, or how did my parents spend money, or what was I taught about money?
That's exactly right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, then let's talk about trust, which can also include infidelity. What are your tools on that, please?
Yeah, so I think, they're different. So if we just take infidelity, my first piece of advice is we want to make sure that there's remorse in order to, that's the first step. If there was a betrayal of any kind, there needs to be that remorse. And so the first question I always ask the partner who was betrayed is, do you feel like your partner is remorseful? Because it's very important, because if they feel yes, they've apologized, I can sense, we're going to work through it, then it's kind of easier to go from there. If not, that's the first step of, hey, we need to kind of do work around that. So that's the first piece. But I think as far as trust in general, we have to look at, what's going on here. Are there underlying resentments? Are there real legitimate issues of trust going on behind closed doors? Or is this, again, where we talked about a manifestation of how we grew up, where we've kind of closed off and a parent cheated all the time. And so we automatically assume that our partner's going to cheat, things like that. So that, to me is, going to be fundamental. But I think one of my favorite hacks, which kind of it's for all of them, is an acronym that I call TEASE. And to me, we always think like, oh my God, I don't have the time to spend with my partner. And I'm always like, you know what? You don't need a ton of time. You need what I call like quick partner connections. And so the acronym TEAS, the first is traditions. And I want you to sit with your partner and just create a tradition for the two of you. Again, doesn't have to be long, could be 5 minutes in the morning where you talk about your intentions for the day, things you're grateful for, or just sitting and having a cup of coffee. E is for efforts. Where can you do something for your partner where it's not a big deal, but they would appreciate it? You are getting them water, putting it beside their bed at night. You are, cleaning their car, things like that, that just are very simple, but mean a lot. And then A is acknowledge. So can you acknowledge your partner verbally? Maybe you want to say, hey, you know what? You mean so much to me. We forget how much those comments mean so much and kind of take our partner for granted. They're there, they're always there. Oh yeah, they know how much I love them. No, we always want to hear it. Yes. S is silly. Sometimes when being in a partnership, we become very serious. We got things to do and we've got the kids and we've got soccer practice and we've got the dishes to do. And I'm always like, let's bring back some silliness. So, when your partner comes back, start talking in a foreign accent, have them come in and, hi, honey, how are you? Throw some, put a pig nose on. Just, bring some lightness back into that, which makes so much difference. And then E, the final E is erotic. And so maybe you just want to, throughout the day, send your partner a cute, sexy text and be sort of flirty and fun. Or if that feels strange to you, maybe a sensual poem, something to bring in, because we forget, right, that these things start before the bedroom. So we can kind of create that. But tease to me is just, it kind of it encompasses everything, right? Of we want to connect with our partners in different ways. And that sort of fills all of that.
Yeah. That's amazing. I know when I read about that, I was like, "Ooh, I love this." So I put it up on my wall to remind myself. I need I need visual reminders because I get into the mode of, operation. We have 4 kids. And so it's so easy to just go through the motions. And sometimes we forget about those things of I want to do all those things. I want to be silly with my partner. I want to have those moments of connection. I want to know him to know how much I appreciate him and do acts of service, right? Things that make him feel good. And, intimacy is also an important piece of relationships. And so all of that, but it's if I have the visual reminder, it's good for me to execute on that. So that's how I've done it to integrate it, but I love that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. So what patterns or habits do you see over and over that quietly damage relationships if left unaddressed?
Oh, this is a great question. To me, the first thing that came to mind is resentment. So we kind of have these underlying resentments to our partners, and we keep thinking I'm not going to worry about it, or I'm not going to bring it up. And especially if you're conflict avoidant in a couple, which means, it's hard for you to bring up conflict. Oh, I don't want to say anything, or this will just die down and I'll just ignore it and things like that. And what happens is we do carry it. It comes out somewhere. So that's something that I think is super important, and I'm a big proponent of the sandwich method. So if something's bothering you about your partner, start out with the good. Honey, I love how well we work together. We're such a wonderful couple. Then the meat of it. I did want to bring up something. Sometimes when you come home late and I've made dinner, it bothers me. Do you think that, you're able to just kind of give me a heads up if you're going to be late? And then you sandwich it again with, the positive. One thing I love about our relationship is that we can get through anything. And I know, or whatever it is, but something like that, where I just want to encourage people to share when they are frustrated. It doesn't have to be a big drawn out deal, but it's so cathartic for you to relieve some of that, because then you're not carrying it. And we also create that mental tally of, oh my God, they're late again. They've done this again. It's a whole, repertoire in our brain. So we got to get rid of it. And that, because resentment kills sex drive. It puts up an unconscious wall between the couple. So the antidote to that is, hey, we got to talk about these things. And it's going to be, it's a little uncomfortable at first, but then you build that muscle over time and becomes easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, something that helps too is I try to write down what things happen that, maybe I'm not doing well or could improve in the relationship or making my husband feel a certain way, because I want him to keep bringing the things up to me to address those things. So I want to make a conscious effort of reviewing, just sometimes we do it as a couple to say okay, so we talked about this. right? Like, how do you think I'm doing on that? Like, I've been making efforts on being home like on time or letting you know ahead of time. Do you feel like I've done a good job at that? Because I think then it feels good and it's easier for me to keep doing it when they say like, yeah, I really feel like you've been doing a really good job at that, or I appreciate that, or that really makes me feel seen or heard, or like, I appreciate how you value that thing. Because sometimes, again, with the hustle of life, we can get so into just like what we've always done that like we have a conversation, we bring the thing up, we do good for a couple weeks, and then we fall back into old patterns. Do you have any other suggestions about like how to maintain that like improvement piece?
I love that. I love that you have the motivation and willing to do that. I think it's the reminder that, couples are a team, they're a unit. And so it's not like we get very individual, like, okay, righteous, I've done this and I've done this. And so it's the reminder of you're in this together. So if one person's improving, the other person's improving. And I think that mindset really helps. Like, and if you're visual, it's like kind of like you're rowing together. So, if one person's rowing downstream, the boat's not going anywhere. So it's like you both have to be together. And so it's that commitment to each other of, hey, let's just make kind of a verbal commitment that we're both going to look at our own parts, right? Because we're not perfect. We're never going to be, but hey, if we can kind of check in and look at our own parts, that's gonna create the business even better, or the partnership, or however you want to look at it. And, partners come in all the time in the office and they're like, okay, if they could just change, we're good. And the first thing I always say is, it's amazing. And I always say the only way for this to happen is for you to start with your own changes. And they're like, no, I don't want to change. It's him or her or she,
Yes,
no. So I love that you even started with that. So I think it's that verbal commitment of like, hey, we both got our work here. So let's make a commitment that we're both going to do the work here together.
Yeah. And supporting each other. I think like when we've brought something up, and when this team mentality is so important, because when I succeed, you succeed. When you succeed, I succeed, right? It's that bigger picture thinking of like, it's not just about this one behavior, right? But it's about the bigger principle of like, why are we here? Why are we doing this thing called marriage, right? Like, why are we in this relationship? And what are the goals that we have? And most of the time we want to feel good with that other person. Like we wanted to commit to them, whether it's through marriage or just being in a committed relationship. Right. And so the idea is that we do want to stay together. And so it's knowing that most people do well if they can do well. I don't think people are generally out there being like, you know what, I just like really want to screw this up.
Yes.
I'm going to fail at marriage. I'm going to fail at relationships. Right.
And you bring up something that I talk about in Love Hacks, which is I want couples to assume positive intent from their partners. So what that means is we can kind of come with our own narrative, like, okay, oh my God, there they go again. They're doing X, Y, and Z. And meanwhile, the partner's like, what do you mean? No, I was just running late. And so we have to assume positive intent that our partner's not trying to hurt us. There's probably something else going on. Can we have that grace and compassion, just like we want that from them? And if it's hard for you to assume positive intent from your partner, at least assume neutral. Like, okay, they're not trying to hurt me. They're not trying to annoy me. They're not trying. It's like, okay, this is kind of neutral. But I think that makes a huge difference in when we can remind ourselves of that, of like, oh yeah, my partner's not out to get me. This is my own stuff, or I'm just frustrated, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think if you can't get to that place, then maybe therapy is a good place to be, right? Like if you can't find a way to assume positive intent or neutral intent, which I think is great, because really, I mean, like, I know that I don't come at probably 99% of things like with an effort to like do something that is upsetting to my partner. Now, I may upset him, right? I might do something that hurts his feelings or isn't something we agreed on, or I like impulsively chose something where I was like, oh, this seems like a good idea. But then I forgot to like check in to say like, cause we generally talk about big decisions, and I might've just been like, oh yeah, I'm going to sign the kids up for soccer, but we didn't talk about it, but we did last year. And then I'm like, yes, I can understand how that might feel for you, right? And just like having that positive regard for that other person of like, we do want what's best for them. We do care about them, right? They do care about us. And sometimes it comes out flawlessly. It looks great. Other times it looks like, a tornado went through, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that that was our intent, right? That's what we were trying to create.
Sure. I love that because we want that for ourselves. When we kind of do something, we want our partner to be like, okay, I'm going to assume that they weren't trying to do anything. And so it goes both ways. Yeah. I really like that too.
That compassion piece is so important. I think in parenting too, but especially with our spouses as well. So yes. Okay. So communication.
Yes.
We've talked that this is like the heart of a lot of issues, right? Because everything we've just said really is a lot around communication, talking about things, right? So what is one shift that couples could make right now to communicate more effectively? Or, I mean, maybe effectively isn't the best word, but like efficiently or with better success?
Sure. I think, and this is so hard for partners, is to get a little more vulnerable, right? I think we want to protect ourselves. We kind of come in with this armor, and I think it's important to be vulnerable. I think there's this fear that if I am vulnerable, I'm going to feel more isolated. And it's actually the opposite, right? If we come in and we say like, hey, I'm really hurt about this. I'm really upset. There's something, our partners don't want to see us hurt. So there's something really nice about that versus coming to your partner and saying, you did this and you did that, coming back with anger, we're automatically defensive. So just being vulnerable with our partners makes a huge difference. And with that, coupled with that would be those I statements, right? I feel really hurt when this happens versus, you did this and, you always do this and you're late. And, that those you statements are really difficult to digest. So we have to remember that communication is a two-way street and we want our partners to be the most receptive. So how are they going to be the most receptive? Well, that would be if we're coming at it gently and kindly. With a neutral tone. I mean, it's not easy when you're in those moments. So if you feel like you are too heated to have that conversation, take a pause. That pause is huge. Write down your thoughts, kind of take a walk, come back. So you really want, the timing is going to be huge. You don't want to have these discussions when you are angry. It's, to me, that signal is like, okay, I'm a little out of control now. It's not the best time. So and then I think kind of the third piece of this is if you are fighting with your partners and either one, you've noticed your partner's heated or you're heated, it's okay to call a timeout. And I talk a lot about this in Love Hacks where it's not a punishment. It's just a reset. It's, okay, we're not receptive to hearing each other. We're too upset. And so that timeout is going to be key. And I have a lot of rules in the book about it, not a lot, but just the person who calls it is then the one to kind of come back after a few hours and say, hey, looks like we've calmed down. Let's reconvene. So it's not a timeout to not talk about it. It's just a break and then you reconvene. And I talk a lot about the anger scale in the book where, if you can kind of imagine 1 through 10, where 1, you're really calm, like kind of this, Zen Buddha, and 10, you're just going to explode. I want you to kind of take those timeouts when you're at about a 6, which may feel early to some, but I'd rather people do it early than late. Because once you've sort of crossed over, it's really hard to kind of come back from that. So, get in that practice of, okay, right when I'm, about a 6, I'm just going to pause this. I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to come back. Because it's tough. Relationships are hard. And so we aren't going to always see eye to eye and we're going to get frustrated and that's natural. But I think how we regulate ourselves is going to be a big part of it. Yeah.
So important because it's hard when somebody, even if they're not saying something that is negative, right? Or could be perceived negative, but their voice or their facial expression is, right? The body language is telling us that they're super pissed, right? Or they're super disappointed. It's hard to not get defensive, even if they have a neutral tone, but you can tell that they're upset, or it's vice versa, right? Like they look calm, but they're raising their voice, right? Or yes, right? And so I think it's so important to come at it in a calm place. And something that I found, and you talk about in the book too, is, one solution isn't a one size fits all. Like we have to collaborate on those things, right? Because what I think might solve the problem may not be something my partner can agree to, right? So if I am putting out basically demands, like this is what I need you to do,
right?
They may not be able to meet that thing, right? And then I'm going to be constantly disappointed or upset, or that resentment is going to build. So if I say, I need you home by 5:15, right? And that would mean that my partner would have to shut down office as soon as they're done with whatever they're doing and at a consistent time and whatever, then I'm going to be upset if they don't meet that. So I also have to leave space for them to say, like, I don't know if that's an achievable goal, right? To say, you know, like, that would be really hard for me to do. What if we did it like this? Like, my standard time is actually going to not be me leaving the second I'm done with whatever, like my work hour is. Right. And, closing everything up and leaving. I'm going to give myself some grace because I want to be successful. Right. So I'm going to say 5:45. Right. And if I'm going to be later than 5:45, then I'm probably going to know that I'm going to be later. So I'm going to call you or text you and say, hey, running a little late, or I have this phone call I need to make after hours, or, you know, I was going to meet up with the coach to talk about this thing for our kids' soccer team or whatever. So I think it's again, back to that communication piece, but I think also hearing both people's sides to hear what their like needs are.
I love what you just said, because that is exactly right. I think a big issue is that we have expectations of our partners. And when we can't meet them, that's when the resentment happens. So I think it's really important to talk about, okay, so, you know, would 5:15 be feasible? And then that partner has a chance to say, no, you know what, it can't. But what if we did this? And exactly, it's like you're a partnership of trying to figure out what's going to work for both of you. And so, it is kind of, you know, I always say that to partners, like, I want you to almost be a PI with your partner, ask questions rather than assume. So, you know, you may say, you know, hey, why wouldn't 5:15 work? Instead of, oh my God, they don't make me a priority. See, this happens again. And, you know, our partners may say, oh, well, that's the time when I have a meeting with my boss, so I can't, you know, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So, you know, asking those inquisitive questions is going to be key rather than assuming these things about our partner. We all have our own narratives and we can just run with them. And I'd rather couples come in and ask each other questions.
Yeah, the clarifying questions to understand that piece. I mean, and also I know this for me, like leaving promptly after I'm done with my therapy day, like I need some detox time, right? Like, and my drive is not long enough between my house and my office. And so like, sometimes I just need to like sit, like, and do nothing. Like I have a record player in my office, so sometimes I listen to music, right? But I think it's about, you know, talking about what you need to, right? Because each person needs something different. So one partner may be able to come directly from work, but they have a 45-minute drive, and the other person has a 5-minute drive, and that's just not enough time, right? And so, you know, they may have phone calls and other things that they need to do, or just like want quiet time, because if you're walking into, I mean, we have 4 children, so chaos, right? I mean, it's, you know, as organized as possible, but, you know, sometimes it's just truly chaos. And, you know, I sometimes can't go from one stressful day into that. And so like, to be the best parent I can be, I need some detox time. I need some time of just like downtime, but like, I have to also express that that's a need I have. My partner cannot know that without me putting words to it.
That's exactly right. I always say our partners aren't mind readers. So that's what we have to come in and raise our hand and say, oh, I would love 5 minutes. Or, you know, I mean, you're not alone in this. The one thing I suggest to couples sometimes is, can you just sit in your car for 5 minutes to have that transition from the day into that second shift? So just put the timer on your car, listen to music, take deep breaths, whatever it is you need. But then it's like not as a quick transition where you're just rushing from one world to another. But that 5 minutes does make a huge difference. You can even say to your partner, hey, I'm going to be doing this. So you might see me in the driveway. I'll just be 5 minutes and then I'll come in, you know, that kind of thing. Or I'll be down the street because I don't want the kids running out. Mom, whatever works. But yeah, I think you're right. And that we do have to raise that hand and say, this is what I need.
Well, okay. So let's say there's a lot of things going wrong, right? In terms of what we would perceive as going wrong. Like we have a lot of communication issues. How do we start the conversation? Like, how do we walk into that? Because it would be hard to imagine that maybe the other partner is totally naive, but sometimes we haven't talked about anything. And so they like literally don't know that I'm upset. And even though I'm like looking pissed, right? Like they're not picking up on the message that I'm sending. So how do we start this conversation? How do we go into this place of like, hey, something needs to change?
I love this question. And I think it's really simple. It's, hey, you know, again, sandwich method. I love our relationship. I know it can even be better. And what that looks like to me is, hey, I think we need to have some hard conversations of what's not working for both of us, right? It doesn't have to be so intense or serious. It's just, hey, let's just lay it on the line, right? And so for me, it's like, it's kind but direct. And so we don't want to beat around the bush. It's just sort of like, hey, there's certain things that just aren't working, right? And again, if you want to have this conversation with your partner, you're nervous, I would love even for you to write down some notes where it's okay to kind of, hey, I'm nervous to have this conversation with you. So I wrote some notes, if that's okay. I just, bullet points so I remember. And, I welcome your input too. We're together on this. What do you feel is not working? So kind of what you said at the beginning, it's that collaboration. And, we have to remind our partners too, this is not about control. It's about collaboration, which is a big difference.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So let's say if I independently, I'm like thinking about the things that are an issue, and let's say I come up with 10 things that just like are not working. Do we address all 10 right away? Or do we is it a strategy where we got to like fry the biggest fish, right? Like exactly. how do you
Well, it kind of depends on your partner, right? If you know your partner, it's like, okay, they can handle this. I think we can tackle this. If you're like, oh my God, I'm even scared to bring up one issue, then I would start with a couple. And again, the biggest ones, the one that feel like the most priority to you. And so maybe the rule of thumb is like, okay, maybe we just kind of start with 2 or 3 and then sort of see how that goes from there and then introduce some more. But I think that the question to me, if you're coming with 10, it's like, okay, what's really going on here? Are you not communicating at all? There's deeper issues. I think if you've had this kind of laundry list,
yes,
in that case. So you might, again, if you're thinking of something in particular or something, but you might want to seek therapy for that if it's extensive, right? And so, but again, I think just starting with those 2 big or 3, the 2 biggest, and then kind of going to the third would be my suggestion.
Makes sense. Okay. So this kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So I know you see a lot of couples. And so are there things that you see stereotypically that are like things that say this couple can't be saved versus this one can? Because I don't do couples work, but like people will ask me like, like, how do I know if my marriage can be saved or this relationship can be saved? Like teenagers, right? Like talking through the things that they're going through, young adults. So what do you see are the things that determine whether a relationship is worth like investing, doing the hard work, saving, right? Or is not.
Right. So I think to me, I can always tell who's willing, right? Who's the willing participant. So I think the answer really is, are both people willing to do the work? And that really, are they willing to save it? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no. And so, to me, obviously, if the relationship, if there's financial, physical, verbal, emotional abuse, of course, it's time. But if you really feel like, okay, hey, I can really try to work at this. And again, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort, but knowing, okay, this work is going to pay off. We're going to have a closer relationship. Things are going to be better. To me, that's worth pushing. But I think, it's really the motivation of each party. Do they want to make this work, and why? And so, one question I might ask in couples is, hey, why do you want to fight for this? What does it look like for you? And that's really important for both partners to hear. Like, okay, they do want to fight for this. They want this. This is why we're here, that kind of thing. And then I think the other piece is criticism of partners is really damaging. So I think a lot of times if I hear one partner criticizing the other a lot, I'm like, oh, that's going to be tough. And, and I'll kind of, I'll urge them, hey, I'm hearing some criticism, we don't want to do that. But, we have to remember, our partners are humans. And so we really need to treat them how we would want to be treated. And constant barrage of criticism and negativity and things is going to take a toll on somebody. And so again, it's like looking deeper, like, okay, why am I criticizing my partner so much? Oh, because I'm resentful because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's talk about that resentment rather than you kind of doing those little jabs that aren't getting us anywhere. We really need to look at the underneath.
Yes. So why do you think people do criticize? Like why does it get to criticism?
Because it's a passive aggressive way instead of really getting to the deeper issue. And again, what we talked about, right? If we've seen our parents are kind of passive aggressive or doing those jabs and things like that, or it's a way to avoid having the real conversation. And so it sounds like to me, if that's happening, it's a buildup over time of, you being disappointed with your partner, not meeting your needs or expectations and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not something that generally happens right away. I mean, unless it's a behavior we've seen modeled a lot in like our childhood, but to criticize within our relationship, if that's not something that was modeled, it probably is a long pattern of certain behaviors and us not feeling like the other person is really willing to do the work or feels valued.
Right. Okay. Exactly. That's exactly right.
So it sounds like the antidote to criticism is like coming with it direct.
I think it's two things. I think it's appreciation of our partners. Okay. We can never feel appreciated enough. I can't overemphasize that. And then number two is being direct about, what's upsetting you, what's bothering you, the collaboration, how can you fix it? So it doesn't have to be like, oh, hey, I'm the victim again. I need help. It's like, hey, I noticed that this isn't quite working. Can we think of a solution that, works for us both? Where we're really looking at that team approach.
Yeah. I love that you bring up gratitude because, and just like that affirmation piece, because what I've noticed in my life just in general is, so I have this bracelet I wear that says gratitude on it. And I put that as a reminder for myself, in all things of like, I think the more I am grateful for things, the more that good things are happening. Have you noticed that in your life too?
Of course. Absolutely. Like what you give out, like kind of comes back. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like in so many different areas too, of like, the more I say to like my kids or my husband, like, thank you so much for doing this, or I really appreciate that, or you did really well on this, or like, it was really meaningful that this happened, or thank you for thinking about me in this. The more that they do those things. And so then it's like this cycle that it's a self-fulfilling almost, right? Where it's like, the more you support that behavior, the more it happens in such a positive way.
I said the exact same thing in Love Hacks where, positive behavior begets positive behavior. So if you are good to your partner, most likely they're going to do it back to you.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we want to stand on ceremony, but why should I be the one to do? I'm like, just, do something nice to your partner because they're going to feel appreciated and they're more likely to do it back. Or you say to your partner, hey, I appreciate this so much. That feels good to them. And they're going to say it back to you at some point. Hey, I really appreciate when you do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Well, and I think even if you're in the midst of conflict, right, you can find something that you're grateful for, right? Even if it's something really small. And I know that sometimes it's hard because maybe you weren't taught that, right? To really look at the things that you can be grateful for. But it's like, something as small as like maybe one time you said, hey, when you use the Keurig, clean out the pod thing with our coffee, right? And then you go and then it's empty. Right. And it's like, so then it's like, okay, so thank you so much for doing that. Right. Or, it's that they let the dog out. Right. Like, or whatever it is, right. Something that's really, really small. You picked up the kids' stuff or whatever, that it's something small that they're doing that you can still recognize that, because I believe that there is good in everyone. Right. And especially somebody that you love, right? Like, even if it's like, maybe you don't like them right now, but you still love them, right? And so it's like, that there are good things. And then also your kids are watching you too. I think for people that have kids. And I think that's such an important part of like, I am trying to create a collaborative approach for parenting my children or our children. And so that means that I also need to be modeling that with my partner for them to see that part of us, like navigating through things of like, I was thinking this and he was thinking that. And like, how, like, could we do it like this? It's okay. I mean, we're not modeling that all the time. Right. But it's like, this kid wants to do this and this kid wants to do that. Is how can we make this work? And we're showing them that compromise part, right? Because we want them to compromise with their siblings too. So it's like, I mean, this whole relationship thing is hard. There's so many levels and so many layers, and it is hard.
It's very hard. That's the first line I think I wrote in the book was like, relationships are hard. I mean, it's really hard. You're coming in with two different brains, two different wirings. So we have to remember that.
Yes. But love. right? Of
Right,
like,
exactly.
we want it to work. And I love that the thing that you said that like is the determining factor. And I think in the research, it shows this too, is like, if couples are invested in solving this,
Mm-hmm.
there, even if there's been infidelity, even if there's been,
Exactly.
like financial,
Right. Betrayal.
unawareness, right? Like
Yeah.
we've done some things that have
Mhm.
not looked good, but
Right.
we want to fix it and we're invested. Is there
Mhm.
anything that a couple could say, like in terms of like why they want to save their relationship, that would be like, ooh, like as a therapist, you're thinking like that's no go. Has anybody ever said something like that that makes you
Like I'm in this for the money or something
yeah,
like that.
like
Yeah.
yes.
I never heard anything like that. But a lot of times they will say, I'm just staying for the kids, right? You hear that often where, okay, that is a part, right? You want to save your family, but, I want to focus on, what can we work on as far as you, wanting to be with your partner? And one thing that I always love to do with couples is have them write a love letter, like independently, why they fell in love. Because we forget, oh yeah, we actually fell in love with this person. Why? Why did you fall? What was it about this person? And that reminder sometimes clicks in and you see it's really interesting. Like they both kind of light up. It's like, oh my God, wow, we haven't talked about that, or I forgot what that was like. And oh yeah, she did love that about me. And, he said that, or whatever the case, but it's really special. So, even on your own, you could do that if you're not feeling connected to your partner. It's like, it's either writing a letter or maybe writing down the 10 things that you love about your partner or why you fell in love with your partner. And it will make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else that we do at our house that I love, and I do this with everybody, but especially with my husband, is I write like things that I love about him and dry erase on the mirror. I'm sure that our cleaning lady thinks we're
Loves it.
crazy. Because she's like, like, am I supposed to leave it or take it off? Right. And I'm like, it's okay. You can wipe it down and then we will start again. But I think that has been super meaningful too, because like you're doing that thing. And so like sometimes I have to read the messages that I wrote. Like if we're having like a day of not communicating well, it's a good reminder for me to see the things that I wrote about him on the mirror. And so like that helps me to be like, okay, yes, like that's kind of like that love letter thing. Yeah. And I love that piece too of like, sometimes we forget our love story. We forget how we started. Exactly. I got great advice from before I ever met my husband or was even close to being engaged. I just was dating. I asked a woman that I really respected. I said, what is your, and she'd been married for a super long time. I don't remember how many years at that point, but at least 30. Yeah. And I was like, okay, what's your best advice? And she said, never stop dating. And so I've really tried to do that because I think it's what dating is what keeps us going, right? Like, and we love that part of like getting to spend time with our partner, reconnecting, all the things that you're talking about, like talking about our hopes and dreams and sharing stories about our childhood or what we've been through, or talking about our day. And like, we just like so passionately look forward to seeing that person and being with them in all those moments. And I know that maybe not that energy could be kept at all times. And I don't know that it, maybe we're not doing it right. Maybe it's supposed to be, but I think it's hard to maintain the energy all the time, but it is so helpful to remember that like it is what you're pouring in is what you're going to get out. Exactly. And so if you keep doing those things that created love in the first place, right? That connection, that appreciation, then it's going to keep going, right? It loops.
Yep. That's exactly right. I love that. And I recommend that with my couples. I say you should do at least one night a week of date night. If you can't do that, twice a month, right? And if it's hard to get a babysitter, I put suggestions in Love Hacks of like, okay, even, when the kids are asleep, just having a picnic on the floor, just creating that time, because it really shows like I'm giving to my relationship, right? Yes. Or, if you're exhausted, which I get too, it's like, okay, let's just hold hands and like watch a movie together. Like, we're going to create this time, but phones away, no distractions, things like that. Yes. That's undivided.
That you just brought up a really great thing. I think phones get in the way of a relationship so easily. What advice do you have around phone and technology? Because it's hard to put down because it's like so small and just like right there. And like, we feel like we have it right next to us all the time. And it's so easy to pick up. We get the notifications. Like, what advice do you have around phones and relationships?
Yeah, I think you create hard and fast rules around, okay, when we eat dinner, there's no phones. I even bought this like really cute little phone box and my kids love it. You like open it up and you just put the phone in there. And it's like, okay, we all know for dinner times, there's no phone. And I have a rule with my kids, like in the car, They can't be on their phones. That's the one time I'm like able to like talk with them, talk about their day.
Yes.
And so, they know that's the rule. So I think it's, you just create like no phone zones and times. And then other times, obviously, it's allowed, but whatever's important to you, or if you're going to have a date night with your partner, it's like, okay, knowing, hey, for at least a half hour, we're putting our phones away, and then we can kind of come back to it. But knowing, this is our time, right? We have to make this a priority.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, and this speaks to what we were just talking about, but like, what role do you think self-awareness plays in the health of a relationship, and how can we support our partners in this process? Because like self-awareness means we're doing it for ourselves, right? So like we can't be like, hey, let me list out all your flaws, right? Exactly. And so we're not super receptive to that. Like when we come to our own realization, it's so much more impactful. So talk to me about that part. Is self-awareness important?
You said that, yeah. And it comes more naturally to others, right? As a therapist, it's like, so, like it's so easy for us. We're like, okay, let me look at my role, and other people it's not. But I think you make a really strong point, kind of what I had said earlier, like it starts with us, right? We are the ones that are going to make the changes. So even if you feel like, okay, my partner's doing X, Y, and Z, well, we can always do better for ourselves, which improves the relationship. So even if your partner doesn't change, if you're changing, the relationship's going to get better. So I think it's focusing on us and what we can do. And maybe our partner will see like, oh, okay, I've noticed you've, done better in this area. And it's saying, yeah, I've noticed this about myself and I didn't love that. So I've been working on it. And hopefully that leads to your partner being like, okay, let me look at my stuff and what I can improve. Right. Because once we kind of cross over into their lane, it gets a little tricky. So I think it's staying in your own hula hoop and focusing on what you can control and what you can change and being the best version of yourself for this relationship, because then it'll spill over into the relationship and be a positive thing.
Yeah. And I think that can be hard to believe. It can be really hard to trust that process of this, but I promise you it does happen, right? And for some people, maybe it won't, right? But they're the rarity. Normally when we see our partner doing really positive actions, like, maybe we're more of a sedentary household, right? We don't do a lot of physical activity, but one partner starts working out and maybe they want us to work out too, but they say nothing to us about it, right? They just start doing the work themselves, right? And then it's like, you see that and you're like, oh, they're feeling good. They're looking good. They're
energy. Right.
Yes. And so then we might be like, oh, well, I could do that too. But if I'm the partner saying like, we should both work out, right?
Yes.
Or you need to work out, right? It's saying we could do it together. Like, hey, would you go on walks with me? Or would you do this activity with me? Or I like it when we spend time together. Would this be something you'd be willing to do? Or maybe we can take all the kids for a walk or whatever it is, right? Then that feels good. And that's a connection point, right? Where you're doing something that benefits both of you together, but we can't make anybody want to change, right? I think in therapy, that is like, I don't, as the therapist, have the power to change anyone. Do you?
Right. No.
Yeah. I wish a magic wand, right? But it's not that way. And I think people doing change on their own terms actually creates longer, meaningful change. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, and you brought up awareness a lot, and I love, awareness leads to action, which then leads to acceptance, right, of like the situation. So I think it's like, it's three different parts. Like, okay, I'm aware of this, I'm going to change it. And then, look what happens, now we're all in acceptance about like this part of me or my partner or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is hard. Again, amplifying the challenge in this of like, there's so many different levels, so many different layers. And I think, remembering that we're on the same team, we're in this together, that we're succeeding together or, stagnant together or not succeeding together. Maybe we're feeling like we're failing together, but that, we can create meaningful change. So let's say that there is somebody who's in a relationship right now who feels just like super stuck. Right? They've heard the things that we talked about and they're feeling hopeless. What is the one piece of advice that you would give them in, restoring or starting to walk back into this journey of finding hope?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that I think about that really helps couples is, looking at your relationship over time, right? And so I have a graph in Love Hacks where it shows kind of the difference between passionate love and companion love. So passionate love is like that feeling when we're first dating and like we're so excited and it's like lust and it's exciting. And so it's like the graph kind of like, is through the roof, right? But over time, you kind of see it, go down like over time because that lust, you can't sustain that. Mm-hmm. And companion is the opposite, right? Where it kind of, starts off slower, but then over time it increases because it shows like, so I think if you can look at your love and reframe it, right? We're like, okay, I don't have that same lust I had in the beginning, which I'm not supposed to have for the whole period, but I have a closer connection. I have intimacy. I have stability, right? So sometimes that reframe helps. And we kind of, it's like, gosh, I missed that lust or, and so what I would recommend in that is like, okay, so then like, what can we do to sort of increase that, right? They've done studies to show that you can do adrenaline-filled activities and you feel closer with your partner. So can we incorporate some of that? So it's like thinking about what you're missing, what the feeling is, and substituting it with healthy activities with your partner can help. Or maybe you're like, hey, I'm so overwhelmed with like family and kids, like I just need 2 nights alone, like at a spa, or, okay, great. That's what you need to just recharge, whatever it is. But to me, it's recognizing that, long-term relationships, they may kind of have like, up and down, but overall, if you're kind of seeing progress, you're doing good. You're on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned a really good point of like, sometimes the connection piece or the relationship, positivity feeling that we have is not always about being together. Sometimes we need time away. And I think sometimes couples, especially with young kids where you feel like you can't leave the house, like you're just kind of like trapped or like, you're like, oh, the kids are just a mess when we go to a restaurant or whatever. And like, yes, our kids do have to learn how to go to restaurants and do the things, but like we may just not be up to it at this point in life. That like, sometimes it's just like being like, hey, go out with the girls or hey, go out with the guys, like spend some time away so that you're excited to come back. Cause I think when we just are doing the same thing over and over and over again, that can become monotonous and like kind of boring. Right. And I think we all do like some excitement and doing some things together, but like also having time away because we're not just about our relationship, right? No. We're so multifaceted.
Yes.
And so that can be an important piece too.
I one of my favorite ways to look at couples too is like the letter H, where you're both individuals and then you connect, through kind of this even level playing field versus like an A where you're kind of dependent on each other. You're not really independent. There's some codependency. So kind of thinking, like it's okay to be individual and have our own interests, but we do need to bridge that gap and come together.
Yes, I love that. Kelli, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for all of your tips and tools and thoughts on this.
Oh, thank you so much. I love talking about this clearly, so I could talk about it for days. Thank you so much for having me and all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Kelli. That was such an amazing conversation. I so appreciate all of the work that you put into your book, Love Hacks. And I highly recommend everybody to go out and purchase it because you will not be disappointed. Kelli has put so much time and energy and amazing tips and tricks that are easy to implement. I think that's the key for me is like, I need stuff that I can implement easily into this book. So Love Hacks, check it out on Amazon or wherever you purchase books. And also, can I ask a favor of you before you go? Could you please subscribe to our show wherever you watch us or listen to us? Would you go ahead and hit that button to subscribe? And if there has been an episode that has been really meaningful to you, would you share it with a friend? We would certainly appreciate it here at Accidental Experts. With that, I will say, have a fantastic day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.